Finish this sentence. The most powerful businesses are built by people who
are in it for the right reason, not for making a quick buck.
I love it.
Because if you're in it, quick answer. Sorry, I'm a teacher, okay? I gotta elaborate here. No, if you're in it for money, then you get frustrated when the money doesn't come right away.
Welcome back, everyone, to HUMHR Career Insights. Today's guest is Daniel Maveneka, who is a builder of businesses. He builds businesses by first paying attention to people, to systems, and to the real problems showing up in everyday life. Daniel is a serial entrepreneur. He's based in Mississauga, Ontario, and he's a career educator with over 20 years in Ontario's public school system. That foundation led him to create Ontario Online Schools, a fully accredited online high school serving students in Canada and internationally, built with trusted colleagues and former students. Alongside education, Daniel is also the founder of Mbinga Coffee Company, a social impact venture working directly with farmer cooperatives in Tanzania, as well as the mind behind Bridging Generations, an initiative focused on digital literacy and online safety that he's building with his own children. Most recently, he's developing Check In Canada, a personal safety app designed to support people who live alone or are socially isolated. A powerful reminder that the most meaningful businesses often start with simple human needs. Across all his work, one theme is clear. Entrepreneurship for Daniel is not hustle. It's a long-term career choice rooted in relationships, trust, and impact. Let's get into that conversation. Daniel, welcome to HUMHR Career Insights.
Good morning, Bash. Wow, I'd like to meet the guy you just described because he sounds awesome. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so you describe yourself first as a husband, father, educator, mentor, before we talk about entrepreneurship. You talk about the how, right? Before you talk about the why, or rather the why before the how. How has that identity shaped the kinds of businesses you choose to build?
Well, that's a great and challenging question. I think that if sort of look at my background, I was born in Zimbabwe. I'm a Shona, and the concept of family and moving the generations forward is an important one to me. In Shona, we say "sumudzira dzinza" type situation. I moved to Canada in 1997. I went to university here and I got a job in education. I didn't initially come to Canada expecting to do education, but looking back on it and realizing that my mother was an educator, my father is an educator, my grandfather on one side was on my father's side was an educator. It's just educators everywhere. And indeed, my wife is an educator, her father's an educator. So looking back now, I was always going to education, but there's always been another side of me that felt like I needed a little something more than that. I've got my grandfather on my mother's side was an entrepreneur. He had shops and was a big farmer in the Rishavani area. So when I moved to Canada and started my career in education, it's a great career, very rewarding. But it's the kind of thing where once you get a job in a school system, you can just hang around for 30 years and then retire. Then you'll spend 10 years enjoying your retirement. Then you get sick and you die. And that just didn't seem like a good use of the opportunities that had been afforded to me coming from Zimbabwe going to Canada. Yeah. So then you sort of start looking around and you're always looking. No matter how long you've been here, you've always got that lens as a Zimbabwean looking at things. And, anybody who knows Zimbabwe, we can always look for things. We're always looking for opportunities and gaps. And when you come from countries where the system is not so structured and set up as it would be here in Canada, in the West, then you find some real opportunities. And so my business thing has always been just trying to fill a need that I see through the different lenses that I have, firstly. And then secondly, to connect it to the family thing, it's important for me to build a legacy and prepare my kids for the world that's coming. When I started school here in Canada in 1997, there were no iPhones or smartphones with apps. By the time I graduated 4 years later, smartphones and apps were a real thing. No matter what education is doing, we're building skills today, but those skills must be useful tomorrow when technology has changed. So the reason that family comes first is that once you've stabilized your family, then you sort of look around to what can we do to put them in a better position later on in life, seeing that.
So more in the narration of the story that you can see how family is such an integral part of you and everything that you do. You talk from far back as your great-grandfather, right? And I'm like, wow, that legacy, it's really important to you that to pass on a legacy. And it's fairly evident in the work that you do. So let's talk about that work that you do. Let's talk about these ideas that you have, these brilliant ideas that you have. Is it the idea first or is it problem solving? Because it seems every single idea that you have, every single idea that you implement starts with the problem. And I want to talk about that a bit and see if that is the case with you, because in entrepreneurship, we always say, I had a brilliant idea, but where does that idea come from?
In my personal experience, I think I try to solve problems. And perhaps that's a function of being an oldest child. Perhaps that's the function of educational upbringing at St. George's College in Harare, Zimbabwe. Go Dragons. Perhaps it's being a teacher, right? Like, we want to solve problems. And I think also part of it is being the Zimbabwean background again, where it's not the world doesn't always work out well, so you got to fix problems. So I think I've always approached it from the perspective of, if I see a problem that needs to be fixed, if nobody else is doing it, then I have come to believe that I'm competent enough to do it. This is not something that was always a characteristic of my personality. However, on the topic of ideas, I think it's fair to mention that I watched this TED Talk once called "How to Not Yourself Over." We're going to keep it clean because of the algorithm. I was introduced to me by Knowledge Nemara, who's another Zimbabwean friend of mine. He's an educator and entrepreneur in Montreal. And the thesis of this TED Talk was that if you put 5 people in a room together and just let them talk, within an hour, they'll come up with 3-4 really good ideas. But very few of those ideas become reality because we're comfortable in what we're doing. And so that risk of trying out an idea and a venture, we stop ourselves, right? Oh, I'll get to it later. I don't have the money for it. I don't have the time for it. But really what we're saying is, what if I fail? And for me, I don't mean to sound braggy, but life has been good to me. Right? Like my career in education has been really good to me. The fact that I've been able to come to Canada and establish this life that I have is a blessing. It really is a blessing. It was not something I did by myself. I was supported by family. I was supported by friends. I was supported by strangers. And so now I have that opportunity. And if the worst that's going to happen is it didn't work out, and so what? Because, when I was younger, I'd say, oh, the people will laugh at me. And it took a while to realize that the people don't really think about me that much. So whether I succeed or fail, it doesn't matter. So give it a try, and you never know. So problem solving first, but also if you get an idea, try and run with it. Bash, I'll send you the links to that podcast, the TED Talk. I think people should listen to it. It's only 15-20 minutes long, but it really did change my mind and change my mindset about how to approach problems.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to that link, because it's something that we all struggle with as entrepreneurs or even just as individuals, right? For me, the ideas are constantly there and implementing. And for me, it's always, I don't have time. I'm still doing this. I'm still doing that. And then fast forward like a year or two later, I look around and I'm like, hey, so-and-so actually did implement that idea that I had, and it is working out fine. So had I actually done it? And it's interesting when you say that. I'm actually saying, what if I fail? Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're not thinking about you.
Yeah.
I have these conversations with my teenage daughter, Nyasha. And, as all teenagers, they worry a lot about sort of what other people will say. And I'm often telling her, look, I've been teaching high school for over 20 years. I promise you that in a class of 30, 29 of those people are thinking about themselves and worrying, what is everybody else thinking about? And the one person who's not worried about it is the one who's happiest. So don't worry about what the world has to say or what they think. Do you. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, you're still better because you tried. There's a book by Canadian author Robertson Davis called Fifth Business. It's one of my favorite books. And there's a line that sticks with me all the time. He said, the greatest curse is to live the unfulfilled life. So imagine you get to the end of your life, however you imagine it in your concept, and you look back. And all these opportunities are there that you could have taken, you could have tried to branch off into different places, and then you didn't. Well, the guy who did is standing right next to you at the end of that line too. So you were like, hey, I did nothing, but I got here. You gotta try. You gotta try, because what's the worst that happens? Especially in a situation like where I live in Canada, where there's so many opportunities, you just gotta go out there and try it.
Yeah. You mentioned 20 years in higher education. When did you, and you obviously were always, you always had what we call the side hustles, right? While you were doing in education as an educator. When did you realize that these side hustles can actually become a career and leave the education sector?
I don't know that there was a natural break or a big aha moment. If we talk about the online school, for example, Ontario has always had a system that allows for the public education system, which is, in my mind, the best education system in the world. It really is. We'll get into it later, the differences between the various education systems. But Ontario's always had a good public education system. But as society progresses, whether it's in school, people are starting to learn hybrid, there's more learning online, and so it was back in 2017, actually. The government of Ontario, I believe it was 2017, you can fact check me here, but the government of Ontario announced that all high school students would need to take a certain number of courses online as a graduation requirement. And of course, that caused a bit of turmoil because society doesn't like change. If you look at a classroom today in many parts of the world, it looks exactly the same as the people, as it was when people who are now standing at the front of the classroom teaching went themselves, right? So they don't like change. But if you sort of think about it and you speak to people in the private sector, a valuable skill that students who become employees and business owners later on after high school is the ability to work online, the ability to work hybrid. So when we talk about ideas and opportunities there, I remember I was watching this announcement, and I've been in the system for long enough to know the capacities of the systems, its strengths and its weaknesses. And at that moment, there was no capacity for all the students in Ontario to take all those online courses at one go. Problem. The government has mandated that they'll have to take X number of online courses, but there isn't a capacity within the public school system. So what do? Build an online school then. And so that's what we did. I hadn't been in school administration at the time, but again, shout out to the government of Ontario. They make it really simple. There's a manual, you can go there and you follow the requirements. I did at that time have my master's in education, so I had the professional qualifications, but I'm not the only one. So I went to work and I spoke to a few people about it. And for X reason and Y reason, I think the conclusion was like, oh, we can't try it because what if it fails? And I thought to myself, well, okay, give it a shot. And it's been a slow and steady process. We've been in business now since 2018. We were certified, I believe. It's now 2026. So yeah, from one sort of little problem you solve to another, that's what happens. And we've now been able to help a variety of different students, from that student who wants to do a specific course that's not offered at their high school, to that immigrant who comes with qualifications from a different system and they need to get courses for the Ontario system, to students who, especially after the pandemic, who perhaps had anxiety and mental health issues and couldn't function in a regular school system but still wanted to graduate. So yeah, you solve problems. I can't wait for the day when we have 10,000 students enrolled. We're not there yet. We're still a relatively small school, but we do good work, and so we've stayed in business, and all that came from literally sitting, watching the news, hearing what the premier was saying, connecting what I knew, and then going about and doing it. And I didn't do it all by myself. I did not know how to design websites, so I called a friend of mine who is Crispin Paspanojga, is a great innovator. He's a hustler. And so then he helped me build a website, and I couldn't teach all the subjects. So I went to colleagues and friends that I'd worked with, and I said, hey, do you mind coming in and teaching this? And through trial and error, we figured it out. And now we have what I think is one of the most progressive schools in Canada, because we've moved away from pedagogical approach where the teacher tells you information, and when you regurgitate it, you demonstrate your learning, to inquiry-based, where you're given a problem, and as you try to solve that problem, you learn the skills for that course requires. So because of that, we don't worry about AI and students cheating, because you're solving a problem. And if you're using AI to help you try to solve that problem, that's actually what we're trying to do. Whereas the old model of school has students now writing essays in pen and paper because they're worried that kids are just going to use AI to do the work, right? So you got to be dynamic, you got to shift, but got to be ready to try it.
Yeah. So the school is fully credited.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. And is it global? Is it like, okay, so can someone who is in Kenya, for instance, can they learn in the school?
Yeah, absolutely. It's our current model is asynchronous learning. The lesson materials are there. Every course is facilitated by a qualified teacher. And actually, we've gotten teachers, not just people who are practicing teachers now, but also people who have work experience. So for example, at our science programs, they're taught by a teacher who left teaching to go into engineering. So he understands the theory of education because he's been a teacher, but he also works in the industry. So he can have real conversations with the students who want to go into engineering, that sort of thing. And yeah, so students can, from anywhere in the world, they can enroll with us and they can get an Ontario Secondary School diploma, which, listen carefully, all you parents who are out there paying for your child to do O-level and A-level and GCE. That's, first of all, disclaimer, that's what I did. I did A-levels at St. George's, and I was able to use those O's and A-levels to get into the Canadian experience. But my pathways were limited by the subjects I took in A-level. So I did geography, history, and English, so that automatically pushed me towards the arts, right? I came and I was going to be a lawyer, and you can do that. But with the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, you do 30 courses from grade 9 to grade 12. And a grade 12 can do everything, must do math and English, but they can do humanities, they can do sciences, they can do physical education, they can do business, computers. And so therefore, when they get to university, the pathways are far wider open than students who do O-level and A-level. I was in Tanzania last June looking into some coffee, and we'll get to the coffee a little later on.
Mbinga coffee.
Mbinga coffee, that's right.
Yes.
But Mbinga coffee, just to jump to the future, Mbinga is a region in southern Tanzania. It's not the Mbinga that we use from Zimbabwe. Although I hope to one day become Mbinga in Zimbabwe, right? But it's when you look at that education model, right, with the GCE, O's and A levels and your IB programs, those are really high stakes assessments. You study for 2 years to get to your A levels, then you've got 1 day to get everything you learned in 2 years out on a piece of paper. What happens if something bad happened in your life yesterday, right? Somebody bereavement, or you just woke up not feeling that. That's 2 years of your life gone. But with the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, you're evaluated throughout the course, and then the grade you get at the end is a reflection of what you did throughout the course as opposed to just on one day. So you have better opportunities to enter different fields in university. There's less likelihood that you're not going to be successful, because even if we had a final exam, if you've been achieving 80s and 90s throughout the semester, and then suddenly on the day of the exam things don't work out for you and you get a 40, we don't average. We do what we call triangulation. The teacher looks at the whole student and their whole performance and then says, what is a fair reflection of the student's work? So parents, if you're out there in any part of the world, contact us if you want your child to get a diploma through the best education system, I think, certainly in Canada and probably in the world, and then be able to use that to get into universities all over, whether it's in Tanzania, South Africa, Kenya, England, Australia, Canada, they can do that.
Yeah. As a parent myself, I know that, making the right decisions in terms of education for your children, it's really critical because it sets them up for the future, right?
That's right,
and there I heard the educator in you. And I was thinking, what were some of those early moments where the educator in you conflicted with the entrepreneur, and how did you resolve that tension when you were founding this online school?
Oh yeah, well, so when you go into business, the goal is to make money. That's why you go into business. But I had a conversation with a very successful banker who I know here in Canada. He's something of a business mentor of mine, Andrew Mushore. And he said that, that Oprah line of, if you find something that you can do and you enjoy doing it, then you'll never work a day in your life. So that same sort of attitude is what he talked to me about. So in answer to your question, we often have situations where a student will need a course, but financially they're not able to pay what they can.
Yes.
Right? And so you're kind of conflicted. You're like, well, it costs me money to operate this.
Yes.
So to give it to you for free, then I'm losing money, and that's not a good business model. But then the educator in me says, okay, you know what? Help them out anyway. So we were able to then get creative about payment ways, for example, because typically here, when you buy a product, especially online, you got to pay for it first before you get delivery of the product.
Yes,
right? So that would be an example of that. And so just the creativity of, why don't you pay what you can, and then hopefully by the end of the course, you've got it done. There have been other instances where students want to take the courses with us, they really need them, but they don't even have a computer. Well, I'm sure if your house is anything like mine, there's probably 5 or 6 Chromebooks lying around somewhere and everything. Give them that. But what business is giving away materials for people? But we do that, right? So it's that pull of, as an educator, you want to help people get to the next step. As a business person, you're hoping that help will help you make some money. But I found that in any situation where it's a real story where I can help somebody, that's what I'm going to do first. Because we don't advertise in newspapers or on TV. I don't know where kids advertise these days, but we don't advertise there. Yeah. Our work is our word. And so coming back to that story again of that student who needed financial assistance to get through, we ended up getting a whole bunch of other students directed to us through the student because we'd helped them out so much that they paid it
Yes.
forward. So if I had been really tight on that few $100s with that one child, I wouldn't have made much more. And that was a real learning for me there, and a reminder, again, back to St. George's College, we're meant for others, for the greater glory of God, was something we wrote every day on a piece of paper. Do the right thing and things will eventually work out. And if not for me, then they'll work out for somebody else.
Yeah. So it's more of a balance, not necessarily one above the other.
Yeah, I mean, you lean to, as an entrepreneur, you're leaning towards profitability and everything else
Yeah.
like that. But as a decent human being, again, business courses will tell you that it takes 5 years from the start of a business before it even hopefully reaches profitability, right? And only 30% of businesses get started out. So just do what you feel is right, and chances are it'll work out, has been my experience. And if it doesn't, well, it wasn't for you, but the lessons you learn from that failure then prepare you for the next venture. Because we've been everywhere. Bash, there was a time when I was importing secondhand tires from Germany to Zimbabwe.
Yes.
That business
I
didn't
remember
work
that.
out, but there were a lot, but there was a lot of learning in that business, which
Yes.
has now redounded well as we're in the business of importing coffee from Tanzania to Canada. Right. So somebody looking at that small window of time would say that the tire business didn't work out. But looking at it from a longitudinal perspective, that was an important step. Right? You look at that one student who got to get their diploma for less than the
Yeah.
cost of the diploma would be a failure. But longitudinally, number one, the success of the student, but number two, the work they were able to do to get us other students, longitudinally to success.
That's lessons learned, isn't it? And being a successful entrepreneur is about learning the lessons, but also not being afraid to fail. I think that was my conversations that I've been having with entrepreneurs since the beginning of this particular season. That's one theme that has come out, that success is not being afraid to fail. But now I'm hearing from you that not just not being afraid to fail, but learning lessons from the failures
Oh,
and
absolutely.
moving on. Moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we've all seen that post of Michael Jordan, right? Like he missed 90% of the game closing shots he took. Now the basketball fans are going to jump on me here, but like he missed a lot of shots that he took, but he also made a lot of those shots. And the shots that he took and he missed, then he got better and he practiced. You're not magic, right? The only instant get rich quick scheme is to win the lottery. And if you're not going to win the lottery, you're going to have to take steps. If you watch a newborn child learning how, not newborn, but toddler learning how to walk, no child just suddenly was crawling and then stood up and like, yeah, okay, I'm done with that crawling, I'm walking. Steps and stumbles, and then you eventually make it. And once you make it, you don't look back on, but that third time that I fell, that was not cool, right? Like, because you move on with life. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to fail. And when you do fail, and I've always put it in quotation marks because you only fail when you're dead, right? Idris Elba was in his 50s before he became famous. Who wouldn't want to be an Idris Elba in this moment right now, right? You keep trying until you make it. And because of the way time works, we can't go back in time anyway, so don't worry about it.
A lot of what you're saying is really reminding me of episode 2 of this season with Professor Lonnie Strickland. If you have not listened to it yourself, I would recommend that you go back and listen to it. It's a lot of the lessons that you're talking about. He talks about, strategy for entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of that. But I want to move on now to talk about Mbinga Coffee Company, and particularly in terms of the fact that this is a joint venture with friends and with some farmers in Tanzania. Why was it important for you to build a business that directly connects African producers to the Canadian market, firstly, right? And that building it with friends. I'm seeing that theme in your ventures. Relationships your businesses are rooted in relationships. So, firstly, why was it important for that African connection, and then the rootedness in relationships of your ventures? Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of the first part of your question, it really comes from the fact that I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. I still consider myself a Zimbabwean, an African, even though I live in Canada and I got Canadian citizenship. But the story of resources for as long as I've been alive has been the exploitation of the resource and the people in Africa for the Western market, right? So I remember we had a party over here once, and we were just talking, and the question came up: where's the best coffee in the world come from? People
Yeah.
said French coffee. Others said, Italian coffee. Italians take great pride in their Italian coffee. Or, where's the best chocolate from? Switzerland, Belgium. And that's poppycock because they don't grow any cocoa or coffee beans in those places. All those resources are taken from Africa, then refined over here and sold at an upscale price that doesn't benefit the local people. And so I know this. And so when the opportunity came up to do something about it, it's no good just posting on social media, hashtag, feed the people or blah, blah. Do something about it. You go to a high-end coffee shop and they're charging you $20 for a cup of coffee that has 3 beans in it. That $20 cup of coffee costs more than a 50 kg bag of the raw coffee beans that are being handpicked and walked up and down mountains in the coffee growing areas of Tanzania. And that's just not right. There's a way, I believe, of doing business where I can be successful without exploiting the people who are doing the hard work. I'll send you some videos and pictures back that perhaps you can add to this podcast. The hardest job that I've ever seen is the coffee picking job because the coffee is grown on mountains that are this sheer. The people have to walk up and down, hand picking them. It's too steep for machinery. And it's all done by local farmers who are just one step above subsistence farming. They'll grow 3-4 bags of coffee and they'll sell it and get maybe enough to put their kids through school. By the time the system has done its thing, those bags of coffee are worth thousands of dollars over here. Maybe they can get a few dollars, and here maybe I can get a few less dollars, and the world can be a better place. Now, in terms of partnership, like I said, I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, but in university, I met my best friend, Eric Ngoile, who is now an entrepreneur himself out in Nova Scotia, Canada. And his family has always been in the coffee business insofar as in his rural areas, Kumushakwawo, as we say in Zimbabwe, coffee is what they do. But it's always just been something that was grown and then sold to the AMCOS, and all they were ever involved in was basically just getting it out of the ground and bringing it to the distillers. Bringing it to the I've lost the word now. The people who process it, right? Like
the manufacturers.
Well, not even that. They're still exporting mainly the raw material out of Tanzania into the Middle East and into North America and into the West. And then there it's roasted as if there's no roasting process in Africa. Why can't we export the finished product that costs $18 for a 340 gram bag of coffee? Why can't we make it there and then the people who make it there make the money as opposed to the resources? So anyway, Eric had always been, we went to Tanzania 8 years ago for his sister's wedding, and then whilst we're there, we went and checked out the land, and we sort of talked about that idea I was saying about people can talk about. We're like, hey, you know what? We can get involved in this coffee business and we can bring it in here because all the specialty coffee people are buying, it's not from France or Italy. No offense to my French and Italian friends, but it's all from East Africa. And then you're just relabeling it. But that was before I'd watched that TED Talk. So we talked about it, then we got back home after the trip to Tanzania for his sister's wedding, and we didn't follow through on it. And so then 8 years passed, and we haven't done anything about it. We've just talked about it. And then we went back again this last June, having decided, you know what, let's really do it. And so we're able to actually go out to the coffee growing region. We looked at the whole process of it, and then we took the necessary steps. We incorporated a business here in Canada. We got our food safety licenses from here in Canada, our import licenses, because that's one of the things that the TED Talk talked about. If you get a good idea, immediately do something to get that idea in motion, right? Because the ones who know physics know that it takes a lot more energy to get a sitting object to move than to maintain that momentum. So once you've committed, well, we've got the business registered, we've got the website registered, we've got our food safety license, it's moving now. Now we're compelled to keep going as opposed to just talking about it. Right? And so we're really excited about how this is going. We're able to provide better quality coffee than most importers, because most importers are buying it from the auction floors. But because of our relationships with the people in the coffee growing region, we're able to get it literally. The farmer brings it to the AMCOS, which is the coffee cooperative, and then we can actually ask them, okay, we'd like 10 tons of Peaberry coffee, 10 tons of AAA grade, and we can get that before the importers who get it from the market do. So we get it for a lower price, but the price that we pay is still better than what the farmer would get if it was sold at the auction, right? So the farmer is making way more money selling to us. We are doing better because we're buying it from cheaper because we've got it there, and we're so then able to provide a premium product that is of higher quality than what's on the market, but at a lower price. And all because we have that lens, again, to see it, right? I don't know if you've ever flown over East Africa and you compare what you see out the window as when you fly over North America. In North America, our farms are in grids, they're in patterns. It looks professional. In East Africa, it just looks so disorganized because it's not one farmer with 3,000 acres. It's 3,000 farmers with 1 acre. So it looks disorganized, but actually they're able to provide the product that we need. So again, if you can shift your mind out of seeing it from a North American perspective and you can see from a local perspective, there's a lot of opportunities there. And again, because Zimbabweans no traga, we can look for things. It seemed like a no-brainer. And so here we are now. I'm huge in Big C coffee. Even though I don't really drink the stuff, I prefer my tea.
Yeah, I prefer tea too. But I'm impressed by how you went for a wedding and, you saw this opportunity. Are you always looking for opportunities?
I don't know that I make a mental choice to say today I'm going to try and find something. But growing up in Zimbabwe, for example, I never met my member of parliament, ever. Not even, they didn't even bother campaigning. I never met them. But here in Canada, the member of parliament's office is right there, right? You can walk in and you can meet them.
Yes.
I tell this story because in open societies like the Canada that I live in, there are so many opportunities that if you just look around, you will find them. I was talking to my daughter, and she's getting to the age now where she wants to get a job, and she wants to have her own money. She can't wait for Christmas and birthdays to make her own money. So she was saying, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll get a job at the local coffee shop, at the local grocery store. But because of technology, they've brought in these self-scanning machines, and then because of what the economy is now, a lot of these jobs that used to be done by young people are now being done by adults who are supporting families.
Yes.
It's hard for teenagers to get jobs. But you know what she's really good at? She's a really artistic kid who's really good at makeup and nails and that kind of art. So because I used to be a media studies teacher and by day I'm teaching kids about how to work on social media and how to create, I thought, well, why don't you, instead of going and working for somebody else, start your own thing? And so my idea was, why don't you start doing people's nails and everything else like that? And it didn't quite work out that way, but now she's got herself a Poshmark store because one of the things she likes to do is put together outfits and fashion, and she's really creative that way. Yes. So now you have a 14-year-old girl who's operating an online thrift store because that's the opportunity that exists out there, and we're looking for it. Right? My son, for example, he's 12 and he loves video games. I remember I used to we had the great Nintendo growing up. And my parents were like, "Hey!" I'll say it in Sean and then I'll translate it. "See, I energy my game, my book." Leave those games alone, read books. Because back when I was growing up, formal education was the main vehicle to success.
Yes.
But would you be surprised to learn that the gaming industry now generates more money than movies and music combined? So the opportunities are there for him. So now we don't discourage the gaming. We still expect him to go to school and do well in school, but if he wants to game, go and game, my son, because maybe you'll become a developer, a creator, or maybe you'll become a professional athlete who games, right? There's so many opportunities here that it is irresponsible for somebody to come from a family that sacrificed a lot to bring him to Canada for these opportunities. Then you just get comfortable enough that you don't have to struggle day by day to figure out what to put, what am I going to eat and do I have a roof over my head? Then you're comfortable, then you're just sitting. But what about the sacrifice of all those who work to get you here? Don't you owe history the responsibility to hustle as hard here as they did there to get you here? And if you bring that African hustle to an open Western society, there's no excuse to fail.
I like that. And I'm going to use that as our break. We're going to take a break and we will be right back to talk about, I want to thread that to the narrative of Africa Rising and also the family aspect that you just brought up. Yeah, so we'll take a quick break. This episode is brought to you by HUMHR, the boutique career and leadership consultancy helping professionals get clear, get confident, and get hired. From CV writing and Clifton Strengths coaching to interview prep and leadership development, HUMHR is here to help you take the next step in your career. Visit humhr.org, HUMHR.org to learn more. Welcome back, everyone. I am having an incredibly interesting conversation with Daniel Maveneka, who is a serial entrepreneur, and right now, we're going to talk about this global conversation going on, Daniel, about Africa Rising. Do you want to throw your hat in there? Throw your hat into that conversation?
Absolutely. As Mark Carney said at Davos 2 weeks ago, we're living through a rupture where the old system is falling apart and a new one is being built, right? And I've always believed that if things are done right, the center of this new world will be Africa. We have the resources, we have the population that is still young and growing. We've got weather, climate change will hit, but we'll be pretty safe in Africa compared to the rest of the world. And there's opportunities, and I'm so pleased whenever I read a news article about African countries and their leaders taking back their resources. So we talked a little earlier about coffee, about chocolate, for example. Yeah. In Ghana, the prime minister, forgive me for not knowing his official title, was talking about bringing in a law that would outlaw the exportation of raw chocolate and force people to buy the finished product there, and then they can still use. And that's wonderful. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Africa, which is great because then that just creates opportunities for us. But if you are an entrepreneur watching this, go to Africa and see what's out there, because it's all out there, and the people are great. The weather's so much better than the -12 I'm living through right now in Mississauga. So yeah, Africa is on the rise. And I think that's also because family is super important to the typical African structure. And so if you can make good relationships there, for better or worse, doing business in Africa will be like doing business with family. So like this, the next century is going to be Africa's century, and the successful businesses are going to be those who are on the vanguard of working with Africa and Afrikaans, because it's in the name. Afrikaans, yes we can.
Yeah. That's the first time I've heard that, but I like it very much.
Copyright.
You mentioned family. It's an integral part of your life and what you do. And you talked about your daughter and your son before we took the break. So I want to talk about that and how you founded Bridging Connections, is it?
Bridging Generations. Okay, so Bridging Generations is it's a program, in simple terms, a program where we get high school students to go to senior living communities to talk to them about how to avoid falling victim to frauds and scams and financial ruination.
Yeah.
How it originally started was actually, again, goes back, the gentleman who I told you about, Knowledge Nimara from Montreal, who told me about that TED Talk about how to not yourself over. We were talking about just generally fraud and how, because he's into cybersecurity, and he was telling me that the weakest link in any cybersecurity plan is always the human aspect, right? You can put in all the firewalls and all the guards in the world that you want, but the human being is going to be the one that lets the criminals in to your organization, to your personal information. You're the one who's going to click on an email and then a phishing email and then get robbed. You're the one who's going to answer the phone call and get scammed online.
Yes.
Right? If you don't answer that phone call, you don't click that email, the criminals can't get in. So he said to me, well, if you want to avoid seniors getting scammed, then they need to be educated. And so we're sitting out actually in the back deck of my house right now, and I was like, somebody should do that. And this is hilarious because I'm an educator, and this was I already had the online school. He's an educator too, right? We come from a long line of educators, and we sat there for like a long time. Somebody should do something. Then eventually was like, well, why don't you do something about it? Okay. And then again, we just kicked the idea around. And then a couple of days later, we went over to a family get together. And one of our relatives, it came out that they had fallen victim to a crypto scam to the tune of $30,000 that they'd lost in a crypto scam. And this is not somebody, number one, who really had $30,000 to lose, but they weren't a fool either. Like the scam was so sophisticated, and it had gone on for over 2 years, and they'd log on, and the scammers had set up a website that looked exactly like a normal trading platform, and he only discovered he was being scammed when he tried to withdraw money, and then they suddenly started saying, oh, you got to pay taxes and everything else like that. And so this really hit home that this is our problem now, right? Like, because when something bad happens to our parents' generation, then we are responsible for, you can't just let your parents be destitute because, well, you should have known better, right? That's not how it goes. And so that was another sort of, it pushed the notch up just a little bit. Then my mom, who was an educator, again, here in Ontario, and she was teaching through the pandemic. So she's part of that generation that are very familiar with their laptops, with their Chromebooks, with their iPads and everything else like that. She'd get these messages and be like, hey, is this a real thing or not? And so fortunately, she had myself, she had my siblings, she had her grandkids. Like, no, this is not it, this is not it. The younger people were educating the older generation on how to avoid these scams. Yes. And to go back 2 generations where families lived, if not together, but within close proximity of grandparents, parents, and grandkids. There was a lot more intergenerational learning there. And it wasn't just a one-way street. It's not just the young people teaching the old about technology. Older people have a lot of wisdom that they can share with younger people because there's nothing new under the sun. So we in our family had a situation where that technology gap was being bridged by younger people with the older members of our family. So now how do I make this a bigger than just my family? Well, what was the problem that we're trying to solve? There are two problems. The first one was that seniors were being scammed, and it's only going to get worse, right? Like they got all the money. The boomers have all the money. They have access to technology, and the economy is getting hard. So the harder the economy gets, the more the scams get out there. And now with AI and all this, the scams are just getting more and more sophisticated.
Yeah.
All right, so problem number one, how do we solve that problem? Problem number two, and I go back to my educator hat, one of the requirements for graduation of high school in Ontario is that students have to do 40 hours of community service. And a lot of students have difficulty finding meaningful opportunities for community service. Yeah, I could say I picked up an hour of litter in my community, but that's not really what we're trying to do. And so I thought, well, what if we could teach these students how to do presentations at homes to seniors about how to avoid falling victim to scams? This solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. It provides students a meaningful opportunity to actually do what they do in school every day, because in every high school class, you're doing a presentation. So that's a skill that you're learning in school, but using it in the real world. You're getting your community service hours. You're also getting a chance to hang out with seniors, because not every child has a grandparent or a senior near them where they can be. On the other hand, it helps seniors because, again, if you've ever been to a senior living community, a lot of them are wonderful, but it's a senior living community, right? So now they suddenly get an opportunity to be visited by young people who want to be there, who are teaching them stuff they're interested in knowing, right? Because whether you're 16 or 60 or 86, you're still interested in technology and everything else like that. So they use this technology. They have young people who are teaching them that stuff. And then they can also deprivatize their experience with scams. So like we go in and the students will talk to the kids, the students will talk to seniors about, whether we're talking about phone scams or internet scams or romance scams. But a lot of it is actually the seniors talking to the students saying, hey, I saw this. Can you explain to me why is this a scam? Is this a scam or is it not? And the third benefit is also it goes to the senior living community companies themselves. Because if you have seniors in your community who are falling victim to scams, that's not good for your brand. So if you can educate your residents so that they don't fall victim to scams, number one, is good for their personal finances and peace of mind, but it's also good for your brand. And there's legislation coming down the pipeline, certainly here in Canada, that is going to put more responsibility on senior living communities, on our banking companies, on our telecom companies to do more than what they're doing right now. And a program like Bridging Generations is one of the things that these companies can be doing to try and ameliorate the effects of scams on seniors. It all came from having a senior in my immediate circle be affected by these scams. And so then we just put the program together. It's an extension of the Ontario Online Schools program. The students go in and they present twice a year. They present in October and then they present 6 months later. And then, so that gives them more than the 40 hours of community service they need. They're trained actually as part of one of the high school courses that we offer. It's called TOJ 4 Seats, Gerontology, and a training program for them there. So they get a high school credit out of it. And then when they graduate, they actually get a bursary, because we do charge the senior living communities for us to come and do the service. But part of what they pay for is to actually get to get a post-secondary bursary that's given to our students who present at those communities. So it's another opportunity for an outing for the seniors. Those seniors who attended the seminars when the students presented go to commencement to watch the students who presented to them graduate, and then they hand them their bursaries that are given in the name of Ontario Online Schools Bridging Generations, as well as the senior living company that the senior lives at. So it's another one of those win-win-win situations there. Yeah. And it all came from a conversation where we found out that a family member lost $30,000 because they were scammed.
Yeah. And that is a problem. I like how you're solving problems, because the scam, the number of spam calls that I am getting, and I realize now that I really just need to ignore them. And, you talk about cybersecurity, right? I just had a conversation with a cybersecurity specialist, and this is exactly the same thing that you said your friend was talking about, So it's definitely a common problem across the world. Right. And the humanity aspect of that, they target seniors, right? And educating them. It's a lot. It's a nice connected puzzle, which explains why you called it Bridging Connections.
Bridging generations, yeah.
Bridging
But you know what?
generations, yeah.
It's been very frustrating too at the same time because it's new. And just like there was a lot of pushback when the Ontario government said that students had to take a certain number of their courses mandatory online, I find our experience has been that oftentimes you'll approach communities and you say, hey, you should have this program. And their instinct is just like, oh, well, who else has done it? Or I've never heard of it. And then they push back. But the smart ones who can see beyond tomorrow can see that it is better in business to be proactive than reactive. And that is something that we keep reminding people, that you don't want to bring us in after several members of your community have been robbed, after their lives have been shattered, after everything they've worked all their life to gather is gone. Come to us before that happens. And unfortunately, we can't prove a negative. If we stop a bad thing from happening, it's harder to quantitatively demonstrate that than if we look at bad things that happen. But as we've existed now, we've been doing this for going on a year and a half. More and more people are learning about this. More and more progressive leaders in the senior living community are approaching us and bringing the program into their communities. And this I just remembered that question you asked about the balance between the doing good and making money.
Yes.
We are obviously, with the bridging generation, looking to do a lot of good. But when you come back to me in 2 years, because you will, and then say, can we get that program at that price that we turned down 2 years ago? Hey, my friend, the world doesn't work like that. That's going to be a conflict that is definitely going to be won out by money. Only joking. Like we've had a really great experience. The students have loved it. And one of the things I tell students, whether it's at the public school role or at the online school role, or just talking to my daughter, my friends, is that if you want to be employment guaranteed in the next 20 years, you need to cater yourself to the senior care industry. Because the population of boomers is as a percentage of our overall population, speaking here specifically to Canada, they're going to increase. We're going to need more senior living communities, more therapists who are focused on senior ailments, more entertainment, more everything for seniors. And so one of the things that we like about the Bridging Generation program is that the students who present take a course on senior care. And then they realize, oh, you know what? Some of them realize, oh, this is an industry I can go into. And so now they've got a foundation in school. They've got connections at the senior living community they use, that they did the presentation with. So that's a natural pathway into an industry that a lot of people don't really think about when they're sort of talking about what they want to do out of high school. So yeah, we're really excited about that. And of all the businesses, I'm probably most proud of that one, because I think that one has the most social impact. And also because it probably affects me the most. I need seniors to not be robbed, because I'd like my children to inherit something from their grandparents. And if everything is gone by scams, then life is going to be difficult. And one day I hope to get older too, and hopefully it'll be a world where scams against seniors have been eradicated, because there's so much education about scams that it's no longer a good business for scammers. So there's a little selfish component there.
Yeah, and there you go again, solving problems.
I try, Batch. I try.
So you work with your children in this, in bridging generations. What has that taught you, or what have your children taught you about entrepreneurship, about leadership, learning, or anything? Have they taught you anything?
Oh, it's a learning all the time in both ways, because there's a difference between Daniel Dad and Daniel Boss. Right? You just have to be. If we're going out to work, then the expectation is that you're going to be ready to do the job and to do the work and everything. So you go into the presentation and it starts at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. You have to be ready to go and do that presentation on a Saturday. But at the same time, when you're working with your own kids, you can't fire your kids. So you need to find ways to communicate what you need from them in a way that will work with your child. And then so that's one thing there. But even more is that I have ideas in my head. So when I was building the presentations, for example, you build them and you think this is working, and I think that I'm at the cutting edge of technology. And then my daughter will look at it and say, oh, have you considered this? Or, oh yeah, no, this doesn't work. Or, so a fresh perspective. Never underestimate what these children know. Right? They've had access to information and technology that we didn't even dream of having. We couldn't even conceptualize at their age. They're really smart. Give them the opportunity to demonstrate that. And when I've given them that opportunity, they've never disappointed me. right? And so I love working with them. I think it's important that I work with them because a lot of parents want to show their children that hard work leads to success. But then we kick them out of the basement when we're working because they'll disturb us. It's not
Yeah.
enough to just hustle. Teach your children how you hustle. They may not continue your hustle, but that skill of working hard at it is so important, right? They see me down in the basement working, I'm building courses, and it's oh, Daddy, you're still working. Why don't you ever take a break? Well, my son, I can rest later, and that's teaching him that, you know what? There's time to rest. There's time to work. And then when we go on vacation, like, oh, this is the best vacation ever. Yeah, we can afford this now because of that hard work. And those are, I think, as valuable lessons as teaching your kids kindness, as teaching them to look twice before they cross the street, because it's going to be a much more competitive world out there when they are in their 20s, right? Go back 30 years ago, the power was in the West. The knowledge and the technology and everything else was in the West. But we talked about Africa rising.
Yes.
My grandmother in Matenda has a smartphone. One of the things we did when we went out to Mbinga was we got a mobile Wi-Fi hub that costs us the equivalent of $30 a month, and a bunch of Chromebooks that cost us $130. And we set up a computer bank at this local school. All they have to do is plug it in, and then the students can use it. We didn't hire any computer teachers. We didn't give them a curriculum. We just said, here you go. Here's technology. These kids are so advanced and so with it. They're now building apps. They're starting little businesses that they have out there with that technology. So if your child is not hustling out there, they're no longer competing with the 350 million people in America or the 44 million people in Canada. You're also competing with 1.6 billion people in Africa, 1.8 billion people in India, and 1.3 billion people in China. So what skills are you giving them? And so that's how I look at it with my children. I'm not looking for them I'm not looking to build an empire that they'll inherit one day. It'd be nice if there's something for them to inherit, but if they've learned and inherited the ability to hustle, which is not something that comes naturally to Western children who, don't have to do that. You're dropped off and picked up every day. There's always food in the fridge. So where do you learn that hustle then? If we don't teach them, then we have done a disservice to all those people who worked hard, from my grandmother to my grandfather to my parents, to get me to where I am having a conversation with you now. If all that wisdom and knowledge ends with me, then what was the point of it?
Yeah, the importance of legacy and inheritance, that the inheritance that we give our children is more than money. It's
Right.
more than wealth. Yeah.
Yeah, money comes and goes. I mean, for those of us who remember Zimbabwe in 1998 to about 2008, where a $5 bill used to buy money, and then by 2008, people were buying bread with baskets full of money. Cash doesn't mean anything. It's great, but it's not the most important thing. It's what you learn and what you can give to society. That is the true reward.
Yeah, yeah. Daniel, thank you for your time. But before we go, we've spent like quite a lot. I think we're almost in an hour now. We're going to an hour. But I don't want to let you go without talking about Check in Canada. You mentioned the senior population increasing and that there's challenges there, right? And you've already seen a problem, you've identified a problem, and Check in Canada seems to be the solution. I wanted to give you some time to talk about Check in Canada.
Okay, so this is breaking news right on this podcast, because we just finished the build for the demo last night. We'll be launching it in a little while. Once we get all the kinks out. But basically, if you look at Western society, specifically Canada, we're surrounded by people and connected with people all the time on our devices, but a lot of people are isolated and lonely, right? So if you're like living in the city, I have a sister, my sister Rachel, love her dearly. She lives in Toronto and she lives by herself. We check in frequently, but not all the time, right? As life happens. And if something were to happen to her on a Thursday, Friday, she wouldn't go to work. Maybe typically Friday, she doesn't go into work. She works from home or something. The weekend goes through. Then Monday, we might look for her. Maybe we checked in on her on the weekend, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who sometimes gets messages on WhatsApp. You plan to respond, then you don't quite get around it.
Yes.
Basically, it could be Tuesday or Wednesday before somebody's looking for you and realize something's gone wrong, because she lives by herself. So we created an app. It's elegant in its simplicity. And basically, you just check in once a day or twice a day. You set up what the check-in is with the app. It doesn't collect any of your personal data. It's a free app that we'll be launching on all the stores. And as long as you check in then that's fine. If you don't check in, say for example, I have it set up that I'll check in every 3 days when we're building it. After the third day, if you don't check in, then when I set it up, I had contacts that I'd put inside. So like, okay, then the app will send a message to Batch and say, hey, Daniel hasn't checked in a couple of days. Maybe just send him a message and check in if he's okay. And, hopefully it's, oh, I just forgot to check or blah, blah, blah. But if something bad has happened, it gives you an opportunity to be connected and somebody looking out for you. Because I was watching a YouTube video, and the original iteration of this app actually came from China, and it's called Are You Alive? And the sad reality was that a lot of people live in a world where if you died, it would take a while before anybody noticed you were dead, right? And so just that this is just another connection thing. And then, of course, we tie it into the bridging generation thing insofar as we built it so that every day when you check in, it gives you an anti-scam or a scam prevention tip. And again, this app did not take a lot of time to build because we've used a lot of the apps that are coming, the AI apps that are coming in now. And then once I had the basic idea, I got some friends who are in technology and app building, and so we worked on that one together. And yeah, like connection is so important in life. We live in a world where you can communicate with anyone in the world, but how often do you communicate? And if anybody's listening to this part and rolling your eyes, go through your phone and look up how many conversations did you have on your phone over the last week that weren't work related. How many times did you call somebody just to check in on them, or did somebody call you just to have a laugh, right? And I think that a lot of us will find that that number is not as high as we'd like it to be. But if you even have anybody who you can call who checks in on you, you're very fortunate. A lot of people, and this is not a sad story, right? Like you move to a new city to get a job and everything else is successful, but most of the people you know are work people. Who's looking for you? And so this little app, elegant in its simplicity, can at least make sure that somebody's looking out for you if something happened. And so we're very excited about it, and we will be launching it later on this winter, certainly before the spring. And we hope it takes off. And then hopefully one day we'll get to a time when it's not needed. But I personally believe it's a needed app right now because connection is everything. And a lot of us are living unconnected lives, which then leads to social problems. Just a quick story here. I had a friend of mine who came out of rehab recently, and he's like, do you know what the opposite of addiction is? And of course, it's sobriety, I said. And he said, no, the opposite of addiction is connection. If you're not connecting with the people around you, then you're going to connect with either the brown bottle or the substance or something like that. So in a world where we're seeing so much mental health issues and so many addiction issues, this is not going to solve all the problems. But if we know that a lot of people are falling into the trap of addiction because they're not making any connections, then everybody who has the capacity to help people get a little more connected should take that opportunity. So that's what we're doing with the app there.
Yeah, and that is definitely solving a big problem in society that we live in now. That's social isolation. We think we are connected, like you said. You look at your conversations, your WhatsApp conversations, or social media, right? It gives us that false sense of you're connected because it's there. So, but when you do look, and I've done that audit, because you look at your WhatsApp and you're like, when did I really have a conversation with this person that I think that I am connected to? And you find that, hey, I actually never really, it's either, hey, how are you? It's business, or you are responding to statuses.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, I actually never really had a conversation, maybe for the last 2 years. Yeah. There's actually someone I looked at and I was like, do you realize that we only talk to say Happy New Year? Right. So that social isolation is a big thing, and
it's a big thing.
Yeah,
and this is why a lot of seniors, to be honest with you, fall victim to scams. Just to go back to the bridging generation thing, because they're so lonely, nobody calls, and so these con men. I try to remind seniors that they're not. It's not some guy sitting in his basement just hoping he can catch you.
No.
The scams that cost money take months and months and months. They build a real relationship with you. They call in and they check, hey, how's your grandkid doing? And this, that, and the next thing. They build confidence in you, and then they rob you. And that wouldn't happen if these people were more connected with the real people in the real world. But unfortunately, in the world we live in today, a lot of people are isolated, and the scammers are cutting in on that. And so, we're going to try and solve all these problems one step at a time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. But before you leave, I know I said that before, but definitely I'm going to let you go now. I want just one last thing, advice for anyone who's listening, professional who's considering entrepreneurship as a career path, especially later in life, right? What's one question they should ask themselves before making the leap?
The one question that you should ask yourself, and so I wish I had, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and ask me this question at 21. What's the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen? And understand that not everything you do is going to be a success, right? And it's not just going to happen by wishing it. You gotta get into businesses that you know something about, right? Don't hear that in Zimbabwe Nando's is buying chilies, so I'm going to call my cousin there, send him money to buy chilies, get him to plant it and grow it, and then we'll sell it. That ain't gonna work, right? Stick to what you know. But don't be afraid. Look at the world we live in right now. What would my grandfather say if he knew all that we have at our disposal right now, right? Anything you want to learn, you can learn for free on ChatGTP or any of the other AI ones, because I'm not, no offense to ChatGTP. But yeah, give it a try. Just give it a try, because you just never know. And if it doesn't work out though, man, you spend a couple of months working on something and trying and feeling alive as you are trying to bring this thing from concept to growth. And in this world we live in, where everything is so routine and mundane, maybe the success is that you actually got to feel alive trying to do something new. Yeah.
Yes. And you actually have learned new skills.
Right.
It can never be a total failure, right? Yeah. Daniel, thank you very much for your time. I normally do like fun questions at the end just to close us off. Well, they're not really questions, just quick answers,
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I can't be held responsible for what I do, but go on. Lightning round. Let's go.
Entrepreneurship or employment? Which taught you more about yourself?
Employment. It taught me that I don't often work well with others, and so it's best to sometimes do it on my own.
Okay. A belief about success you had in your 20s that you no longer hold?
I believe that success was purely evaluated on the financial return of it. Now I realize that the process is as much a part of the success, and the relationships you develop are also a part of the success. And whilst profitability remains the goal, if I can break even but have learned something, have seen some new things that I never thought of or seen before, that's a win. Because when they eventually throw me 6 feet into the ground, I can't take it with me.
As a problem solver now, the problem in society that keeps you up at night?
The fact that we are moving towards Gilead, and the opportunities that exist for my daughter may not be the same quality as that exist for my son. I worry that society might be regressing a little bit in terms of the progress we've made with equality, and that is something that bothers me there. Yeah. My daughter's nickname is Junior, which is unusual for a girl to have a nickname of Junior in Zimbabwean society when there's a son there. But I've always looked at my children equally but different, and I worry about the future for her more than I worry about the future for my son. And that's sad, because we've done a lot of work to get to where we are right now.
Yeah. Last one. Entrepreneurship as a career choice. Worth it? Yes or no?
Oh yeah. I'm really enjoying where I am right now, what I'm doing. I can't wait to see what I'm going to be doing next, because the goal is to build businesses with people so that they become self-sustaining, and then there's got to be something else that comes along next. Right? The average life expectancy in Canada is about, in the 80s? If I can make it to the 70s, that's still going to give me a few decades. We won't say how many now, a few decades. And I certainly hope that when we're doing the same podcast, but with holograms in a couple of years, that the bridging generations and the coffee and the online school will be other stories, other steps on the path to wherever I'm going next. So yeah, it's been totally worth it. Give it a try. Believe in yourself. Bet on yourself, as Fred Van Vliet said. You never know where you're going to go.
That was going to be the last one, but you said something there that I've got to pick up on. Finish this sentence. The most powerful businesses are built by people who
are in it for the right reason, not for making a quick buck.
I love it.
Because if you're in it, quick answer. Sorry, I'm a teacher, okay? I gotta elaborate here. No, if you're in it for money, then you get frustrated when the money doesn't come right away. But if you're in it to solve a problem, the money won't come until the problem's solved.
Yes.
So you're gonna keep at that problem until it's solved, and coincidentally, the money will come along too. Yeah.
And that is an upending to our conversation, leading all that to the one thing, which is purpose.
Purpose. Ooh.
Thank you so much for your time. I will leave you to think about that.
Thank you much, and thank you all who are listening. We will send you. I got some great pictures and videos of our trip when we went down to Tanzania to the coffee, so maybe your audience can see
Yes.
where does that coffee that they're drinking as they're listening and
Yeah.
watching this podcast come from. We've
Yeah.
got some clips from when they were presenting at the senior living home, so you can see what that looks like. And when the app launches, we will bring it back to this podcast, and we will do a hard launch right here. So breaking news, you know it's coming, and we're going to break the news again when it finally arrives.
I love it. I love it, Daniel. Thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those pictures. We'll put them in the thing. We'll put
right,
them in the
perfect.
podcast and ensure that everybody gets to take a look at bridging generations and gets to see where the coffee actually comes from. I think that would be actually fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing and for sharing your career story, for sharing your entrepreneurship story. It's a really fascinating story. Yeah, you really are a serial entrepreneur. And keep solving those problems. And to our listeners and to everybody that's watching, I hope you were inspired as I was by Daniel's story today. Until next time, stay inspired.